Let's begin today's Vanguard news with Bushiroad's next PowerPoint presentation being announced to happen on the 18th of June, which will probably include a new restriction list. Meanwhile, we English players still have to deal with full-powered Shiranui and Lured. With Bushiroad including 2 new card games on their lineup, this presentation will be so long that I'll probably have to skip locals that day just to cover everything, so you don't have to deal with all the bullshit. As part of the Vanguard collab, Shadowverse Evolve units are coming to Vanguard in the form of nationless critical triggers as a box topper in the Japanese version of DZBT-03. So they get 5 to 6 clans with entire new game mechanics from the original series. Meanwhile, all we get is one waifu trigger. While technically getting the bad end of a collab, I'm honestly fine with this, since I consider the Bang Dream crits as one of the best collabs in the game due to them not being intrusive by not having obscure game mechanics, while also being accessible to every deck. Warning. The following contains Kata Sanctuary cards and DZBT-03 that may be too edgy for normal players. Viewer discretion is advised. Magic of Threaded Connections Pararam when placed on rearguard during your main phase lets you pay 1 counterblast to call up to 1 card with equal or lower grade than your Vanguard from your hand to rearguard. Then draw a card if you called with this ability. And while on rearguard during your turn, she gets 5k power if your Vanguard is grade 3 or higher and have 4 or more units on the field. This is just Rarelim's ability but in reverse. And it seems that the theme of the triple rare cycle cards in this set is it requires you to have 4 or more units to get power. Hidden Flash Undercover Surrendus is your typical D-series starter that a lot of Edge Paladin mains would use, if not for their ride lines requiring certain starters. Volley of Blades Undercover Onyx when riding over Hidden Flash Undercover Surrendus lets you reveal a grade 3 Mordalion from your eye deck to add up to 1 monitored Trist from your deck. And while on rearguard during your turn, she gets 2k power if you have 2 or more monitored Trist in your order zone. Speaking of Edge Paladins requiring certain starters, this deck apparently is no exception. This is probably the first Keta Sanctuary grade 1 ride line unit that works on your grade 1 ride turn, seeing as how this card works like a brand gate unit. Monitored Trist is a set order card that can also be played from your drop zone, and if you have an Undercover Vanguard, when put into your order zone, put up to 1 card from the top 7 cards of your deck onto this card face down as an Undercover gauge. Why the hell is this card sounding like it's a dirt version of Galactic Base Aegis? And take note that your opponent cannot look at your face down Undercover gauge as it is not public knowledge. Monitoring Ravener Undercover on for when riding over Volley of Blades Undercover Onyx lets you reveal a grade 3 Mordalion from your eye deck to add up to 1 monitored Trist from your deck. And while on rearguard during your turn, he gets 5k power if you have 2 or more monitored Trist in your order zone. Brandgate lawyers are preparing a copyright lawsuit as the entire ride line and set order works similar to their own stuff, with the only difference being how the cost of the ride line's ability is a secret restriction. Poison Knight of Silence Undercover Mordalion, while on Vanguard during your turn, gives all your undercover units 5k power if you have 3 or more monitored Trist in your order zone. Once per turn while on Vanguard, you can pay 2 energy to put up to 1 card face down as an undercover gauge to each of your monitored Trist in your order zone without an undercover gauge from the top 7 cards of your deck. And while on Vanguard, you can pay 1 counterblast when he attacks to call up to 2 undercover cards from your undercover gauge in the same column. So Mordalion is if Arc-Height and Shoujo Doji had a baby together. Ironic since they're both in the same set. Or those fancy or how he has a blaster weapon having poison properties, and he turns out to be just another battle phase caller. Disappointing. Claw of Secret Schemes Undercover Tigress while on rearguard lets you pay 2 energy at the end of the battle it boosted to return it to your hand. And when it's placed on the Guardian Circle, you can put an undercover card in your drop zone to the bottom of your deck, and this card gets 5k shields. Using 2 energy on top of the energy Mordalion himself uses is going to prevent you from using Biscotti in this deck. Knight of Piercing Acuity Undercover Zeus while on rearguard gets 5k power and cannot be retired by your opponent's card effects if you have 2 or more monitored Trist in your order zone. Why the hell does this card remind me of Obscudied, but without the shields? And speaking of which, Knight of Blackness of your Undercover Obscudied, while in the gauge zone lets you pay 1 soul blast, if he's an undercover gauge, to call himself to the central back row rear guard. While on rear guard, he can attack from the central back row rear guard and gets 10k power if you have a grade 3 or higher undercover Vanguard. And while on rear guard, you can pay 1 soul blast when he attacks from the central back row rear guard while you have a grade 3 or higher undercover Vanguard. Your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or higher, and your rear guards did not perform a drive check this turn. To perform a drive check, but loses 1 drive. And he's put to the bottom of your deck at the end of that battle. So we can put Graham Grace into the list of things this deck copied from. Obscudied before killing off Egria's mentor and Crush was a back row driver that preferred to hide behind his vice captain. As to how he lost this ability after becoming Eva's boy toy despite still having his blaster weapon is a mystery. Finally, Knight of Abruptness Undercover Dura when placed on rear guard lets you pay 1 counter blast if you have a Undercover or Shadow Paladin Vanguard to add up to 1 Undercover or Shadow Paladin card from the top 5 cards of your deck. And while on rear guard, you can pay 1 soul blast when she attacks a grade 3 or higher unit while you have either a Undercover or Shadow Paladin Vanguard to get 10k power. It's no secret that Mordalion's Knight Order is based off Shadow Paladins, but this card makes it obvious. Considering how the Undercover deck has been underwhelming, it was a good call by Bushiroad in making this a side support for Phantom Blaster or Lured in order to appease the Edge Paladin mains. And that concludes this Vanguard news without the bullshit. Special thanks to my Patreon members for continuing to support my content creation. Be sure to subscribe and let me know in the comments any other decks did the Undercover Knights copied from.